Dobro večer, gledate Načisto. Večeras imamo vrlo interesantnog gosta. Dakle, osobu čiji je dobar dio života bio okovan turobnom porodičnom pričom, a opet osobu koja je uspjela da odbaci taj okov, da dopre do svog identiteta, ukroti priču koja ga je godinama izjedala i stavi je u službu dobra. Sa nama je Rajner Hess, unuk ozloglašenog komandanta Auschwitza Rudolfa Hessa. Good evening, Mr. Hess, and thank you for your time. I will start this conversation with one obvious question. How difficult is it to deal with the fact that everybody recognizes you for something that you are trying to escape from? The fact that you are grandchild of Rudolf Hess, notorious war criminal responsible for deaths of millions.
I think on one side, I did it for my kids, to escape out of the family. And only, sorry for the words, only idiots blame me for what my grandfather did. So I feel no guilt for it. Mm-hmm. But I think to use my name in that way as a weapon against things like that, that it happened again, that it repeats itself. Mm-hmm. I think that's the thing I do, and I like to do it. And if people want to blame me, they should. I think evidence itself speaks for itself.
But still, how difficult is to carry the burden of the Hess family?
It was on the beginning really difficult, but now I think I can live it. I found my own way to deal with it, to live with it.
What is it?
To be open and to make my research, to have my Footsteps Foundation created in a way to show people that not everything is black and white in the way.
Mm-hmm. In which sense? Black and white? Somebody could
that you only
misunderstand you.
Yeah, that it's only based on the blood, like many people in the world said. If the grandfather committed crimes, he must commit crimes as well. So it's based on the blood, on the DNA.
He must have his genes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Could you say today that you are at peace with yourself?
Yeah, completely.
Because you were not for years, as I read.
I had my fight with it for a long period, and I think it was a hard fight. But it was a fight not really for myself in some ways. It was a fight as well for my family, for my own kids, to be like a fortress, not to lead them in a way that they became, or that it repeats in my family itself again.
Speaking of family, you grew up in a family that denied the Holocaust and quietly propagated the ideas of National Socialism. When have you exactly, at what age, became aware of that family environment in which you lived?
I think there were it is a two-step system. The first time I realized it was when I was at boarding school. So I committed a mistake, so we stole food in the kitchen. We were caught by the security, brought over the next day to the director, and sentenced to the gardener to help him to clean up the fields around.
School gardener?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what I didn't know in that moment, well, it was not spoken about in my family about Holocaust, about what happens in the Second World War. The only
You didn't know a single thing
nothing.
Until then?
The only thing
so
I know...
So you are then, what age?
11, 10, 11.
10, 11?
The only thing I know that was my grandfather died in the field. So that's it. That was my information, like 1,000 other Germans had the same. Grandfather died in the field. So in serving the army, so he got shot or something else. So what I didn't know in the boarding school, the gardener was a prisoner of Auschwitz. Mm-hmm. So he has the number on his arm. And when he got the list from the secretary with the names on the delinquents, the youngsters, he said, oh, of course, my name. And the first thing he did, he called the secretary and said, okay, who is the name of that boy's father? And the lady said, it's Hans-Jürgen. So, and he was the gardener in the villa of my grandfather, one of 30 gardeners.
Because the villa was within the camp, within the Auschwitz,
yeah,
where your father grew up.
In the center of the main camp.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, so he knows exactly how I was related to. And then my punishment starts. That means a victim became a perpetrator. So it's like a spiral which starts growing.
So what was his reaction?
Oh, it was a permanent punishment. In the worstest way you can treat people. But he treated me like he was once treated by my grandfather. So it was a revenge. He saw the chance for himself for revenge on the family.
And then what happened? Did you confront your family?
Not on the beginning. It was my German teacher who cleaned up the situation with the director, so took me out of the punishment. And days later he asked me and said, would you go with me to Dachau? And believe me, I had no clue what means a concentration camp. It was not taught in the school in my period. So we traveled there, and I saw the first time a camp, a concentration camp. So we went in, and there are barracks left and right. And they were full of the showcases, and everything was full of Rudolf Höss and other war criminals, committed crimes and this million mass murder. So, and that made me thinking. In the evening I called my father and asked him and said, if that guy is related to our family in some way. And he said, no, it's a spelling mistake. It should called Rudolf Hess, the deputy of Hitler. So for me it was cleared up, the situation. Well, I trusted my father, I trusted my family in that case. So I never spoke about it, I never thought about it.
That wouldn't be a better solution.
Yeah.
The advisor of Führer.
But there was another story shortly before. I have a friend, or had a friend, he still is a friend of mine, and his family were Jewish. So, and his father asked me if I wanted to go with him. Well, I was really interested in the family, so I liked the family and all, to a Pesach fest. And I agreed and said, yeah, but first of all, I have to ask my father. So I went home, stand beside the chair and waited that he looks up, so I was allowed to ask my question. And I asked the question, can I go with Chris to Pesach fest? And he slapped me, broke my nose, struck me in my room, locked me in, and I had no clue what's going on. But it was, personal punishment was daily. So it was not nothing any new for me, so not crying or something like that. So that was the first step. Then it comes to boarding school, well, about my bruisals. So my father was really a brutal guy with his leather belt. He used it all the time. So, and then I started my training to become a cook. And it was in the age of 15. I went home, like always. My mom has the hallways full of books, bookshelves. And I saw two books, and I never saw these books before. So, and that happened that my grandmother brought one book back. And I read the title, the first one, People in Auschwitz, from Hermann Langbein, a survivor. And the other one was Rudolf Höss, Commandant of Auschwitz, his memoirs. And the first thing I recognized was, Jesus, they wrote a book and they made a spelling mistake again between Hess and Höss. But before I was able to grab that book out of the shelf, my father was next to me and I get slapped again. So, okay, put my dirty clothes on the spot my mom said, went down to the kitchen and asked her and said, what's going on? And she said, okay, wait, behave, your father is going on a business trip this evening. So when he left the house and everything is clear, I give you these two books you can read. Then you understood what I mean. Said, happened. I got these books. And that was a really rough moment in my life, which was life-changing. I read the books, I packed my clothes, and I went out and never get back until today. So I really quit.
Speaking of your family, you mention a lot your grandmother, as she was trying to shape you in the spirit of National Socialism. If I'm right, I read about that. How hard was it to resist to what was served to you as the truth by your closest ones?
in behalf of my grandmother, it was easy. Well, I not really had a connection to my grandmother. I not really liked her. So that was the easy part in dealing with the history, with the family legacy.
The hardest part was with your father, I guess.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Well, I think parents should be the role model in a family for kids. You should trust them. So there should nothing between. If they say something, it should be the truth. But it wasn't. And I found out that my father lies all the time. So that became that crack on the end that I left the home, said, okay, now it's done. I will not stand it any longer. But then I jumped into another period in my life with drugs, with alcohol. So one disaster leads to another disaster.
Was this the period in time when you tattooed the Star of David?
No, that comes later. That was
camp members of survivors of Auschwitz. When
These
was that?
survivors were the guys who really helped me to overcome with my family past. Helped me in research and give me the feeling that I'm not really a perpetrator. I'm from the perpetrator side, but I'm not accountable for what my grandfather did. That's why I made it.
I'm just curious, what was, talking about that your grandmother was propagating the ideas of National Socialism. What was at the end the family interpretation of everything that happened? What kind of nonsense were they feeding you with?
I think my grandmother at first said the Jews had a good life in Auschwitz. So it was not a concentration camp, that's a lie. It was a prison for people not obeyed in the Reich. That was the first thing. And she never treated the Jews or the Polish people in a bad way. So it belongs on the end, so the guys, the Allies who win the war, they write history. So that was always her comment. And he was a behaved soldier, he was a good commandant, but he was a director of a prison, nothing else. So she never said a word about his crimes, that he hanged people, that he gassed people, that he was responsible for all these million killings, that he organized it. There was never a talk in our family.
Your father's childhood is a tragedy too. I mean, he lived a few hundred meters from
150 meters away.
From crematorium, gas chamber.
And the hanging place. So, and in some ways, like people called me an opportunist when it was the first time in Auschwitz. And I said, I have to visit the villa, I have to go inside, I have to find a way. Not to, like people said, to get the villa back in my own property, no. To see what the Höss kids saw. If it's true that they didn't see anything. And I went on the upper floor and I saw everything, and that was for me really a shocking moment. So how can you believe in things the family told you? And then I started really my research deeper and deeper. It becomes like a
Do you see
obsession.
your father as a victim or as a beast?
I think he's both. On one hand, he can't be a victim. Well, he played with prisoner kids and shows not respect to anybody. So when he entered the camp, and that was testified by many survivors, that they were there inside the camp, and they walked around like princes. So they felt like princes in many ways. So I would not say he's a perpetrator. Well, he obviously not commit any crimes, but the behavior they had. To know my father is the commandant, so everything belongs to us. And I spoke to survivors in a way we're close, like Joseph Paczynski, the barber. And he said really they behaved like princes. So everything, and it was always a risk to talk to the kids in a way, in a negative way, about what happens in the camp.
I have this, I'm listening very carefully, I have this horrible detail in my mind, speaking of your grandmother. I read that somewhere, preparing for this special, that she, years after the war, that she forced you, kids, you especially, to wash strawberries thoroughly. Can you explain to people that are watching us why?
So,
because I know the answer to the question.
what people not really know, that everything from the victims were used. The hairs for pillows, gold teeth, money, currency, stuff like that. And on the end, the bones. So they crashed it down to make fertilizer out of it. So she used the fertilizer for the vegetable, for the greenhouses, and on the other hand you have the crematoria, which spit out a lot of ash. So the windows, the roof windows of the greenhouses were open. And she said, okay, you have to wash the strawberries and the vegetables first, while it's full of ash.
What do you feel today for those people? Do you feel you feel sorry for them?
Of
Do you
course.
feel contempt? Do you feel anger? What stage are you
I
at?
think it's a huge amount of emotions which come up. And I reached now 177 survivors I know personally. I met them, I talked with them. And with some survivors I came really close. One of them is on my chest, Eva Kaur. She passed away this
We'll
year.
talk about her a little
Yeah.
bit later, yeah.
So, and it was a need for me to, well, to clap you need both hands. To listen to these guys, what happens if they have a special relationship with my grandfather. Did they met him? Did they know anything about it? So that was my way to deal with it.
People were telling you that he was like a caring father, family man. I'm talking about your grandfather, Rudolf. How would you describe this man and his cold atrocity contained in the words, "An order is an order"? That was his
It was the
defense.
former excuse for all Nazi perpetrators. In order. We know, like Schindler's List, Blaschow, Goethe, he was passionate with killing people from his balcony with shootings. So my grandfather, if he was not passionate in it, how he found gas, how he found that solution.
Cyclone B.
Yeah.
That was his formula.
Yeah,
actually.
it was, for him it was a normal job. I know people would not really understand that way. But if you go in a factory building a car, so if there something happens, crimes happen,
So it's saying it was like a challenge to find the deadliest weapon.
He was a believer in the regime. He believes, without questioning it, that the Jews are the enemies of the state.
You, at the end, once you escaped from your family, you found a new family. Now,
Yeah, my own family.
Yeah, Eva Moses Kor. She was a survivor from
Yeah.
Auschwitz. I'll just introduce her to our viewers. And she was a victim of Josef Mengeles
the twin
torture,
experiments.
along with her twin sister. The two of you became very close, and then she symbolically adopted you.
Yeah.
How comforting was this relationship for both of you, and in which way?
I think in some ways I was really honored that she made that. On the other hand, it creates a lot of problems.
For both of you?
Yeah, of course. Well, she prays forgiveness. So she forgave the Nazis. And in the Jewish world or in survivors' world, that's impossible normally. So in that moment, I was again in a situation that it was a person like Eva, and we came really close. We became close friends. Now I was in the same, how you call that, like a situation that I said, okay, why you not forgave your father? Why you not forgave your grandfather? Why should I forgive my grandfather? In which way should I forgive him? And I can't. Of course, my father, I can't forgive. What he did? No. He broke all the rules, all the values. But on the other hand, he creates the person I am today with all that stuff.
Tell me, what do you say to people who describe that relationship between you and Eva as bizarre?
I think it's...
I suppose you met a lot of them.
Oh, of course. I always said every survivor has the right to deal with it in the best way he can to survive. To deal with it, to come in terms with it. And for Eva, it was forgiving. Forgiveness to pray it. Other survivors...
And that's clearly not your position on the issue.
Yeah, but it's the way how they have to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm just saying you differ in that sense.
Yeah.
You and late Eva.
Yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm. Was that, in a way, her revenge? I'm asking this because I read that she once said, okay, Rudolf Hess couldn't enjoy in his grandson, and I can.
Of course.
Was that her little revenge?
Yeah, with a smile on her lips. Mm-hmm. When she said that when we made the film Unuk, together with Alex, and I was really said, wow, Eva, you know what you said. On one hand, you pray forgiveness, and on the other hand, you use that sentence as a revenge. So, what means forgiveness? In which way you forgave?
So those are pretty mixed feelings. Right?
Of course. And he said, yeah, but I have someone, you lost your family. So you never had a grandmother, never in your life. So I will be the best grandmother for you, I can be. And you will be the best grandson for me, you can.
I think the saying goes, God moves in mysterious ways. Eva died a few months ago, visiting the camp, Auschwitz,
where she was liberated.
And her sister suffered, went through torture of Josef Mengele. How did you take the news of her death?
It was really strange for me to hear it. A friend of mine, while I was on traveling, so was not able to see any news, and he dropped me a message and said, Eva passed away. And I was not sure. I said, okay, look, where's the next television? Where I got the news? Internet connection. And I was really shocked that she passed away on the place where she was liberated, in Auschwitz on a trip. So and I felt really sorry in that moment that it happens there. I wished if someone passed away, that he passed away in his environment, where she lived, where she was in a comfort zone, but not at Auschwitz. How horrible
not the worst memory.
Yeah.
There are many people around the world who greatly appreciate what you do today. But there are also, I suppose, people who cannot forgive because of the horror they went through, and from the victim's position, that's totally understandable. How many unpleasant situations have you had because of your unbelievable physical resemblance to your grandfather?
I have to say, from survivors, none. From sibling of survivors, a lot. So the next generation. But mostly of it, I got blamed from the new fascists, that I got brainwashed by the Jewish. So to cover myself, to be a good person, I don't really take notice about that.
How did you react to that fact at the very beginning? I mean, every morning you look at the mirror talking about jeans. Hello, I look exactly like Rudolf Hess, notorious war criminal.
I think that belongs to Joseph Paczynski. When I met him the first time, 2010. And we met in Krakow in a synagogue. And before he changed a word with me, he said, okay, like a role model. Walk along and come back. I did. And then I got his statement. And that was really shocking for me. He said, okay, your shoulders are a little bit wider, you're a little bit taller, but you look exactly like your grandfather. That was a hit straight on my forehead. And of course, then you start researching, looking, how is the connection between him and me? If it's really what kind of attitudes I have. Like maybe if you see my desk at home, everything is on its spot. I'm really accurate in everything. So if I do something, it has to be finished, not wasted around and said, okay, maybe I do it tomorrow or next week. No. If I start something, I finish it. And these were all these values of my grandfather. Or if I go out, you have ironed clothes. You take care about your dress, about your haircut, things like that, like fingernails. You look on so many things in that moment where I said, wow. And then it comes that point where you ask the question, did I inherit that beast as well? What happens if it comes to that point and that beast became overhand of me? Did I react on the same level? So many things goes through your mind in that moment.
Are you still afraid of that?
No, I can cope right now with it. And that is the part of survivors. They really help me in that way. That it not belongs to you, not feel any guilt for it. You were not even born.
You are now the head of the Footsteps team organization, which gathers the Nazi descendants that have faced the crimes of their predecessors. How many are there of them? How rare are people like you? How many of them didn't manage to escape from their family background?
I think until today I'm the only one. I know Niklas Frank very well, the son of the general governor of occupied Poland. He did the same like I do in Germany. But my job is worldwide. So I travel a lot. 2 weeks ago, I was in Toronto on the Holocaust Education Week. And it was in some ways really interesting to see the youth. They never go to such Holocaust weeks if a survivor is there. But I said, it's always the same story. We can't hear it anymore. So it changes a little bit. And I always try to keep a survivor with me. That people can see, especially students, that's the main focus of our team and of our work, that they see, okay, they can be friends. It's always in the world a separation. You have the perpetrators, you have the victims, there's nothing between. So they cannot cope with each other. So keep them enemies, keep them in a way painful, pity. I don't like that.
You were researching a lot. Did you ever go to the place where your grandfather was hanged?
Right now I was 35 times there with over 4,000 students. It's a lot. And it's always, it's like to punish myself. I have to be there a day before to acclimate myself with the place. And I made that mistake in the first time, 2009, when I was the first time there. And I touched things. And it was horrible for me, and it left such an impact. And when I now enter Auschwitz, I put my hands in my pockets. I cannot touch anything. So if a door is not open, I have to wait. If it's raining outside, I wait in rain until someone gets out and opens the door, so I put my leg between to come in.
Let's move on a little bit to our region, to the recent times. To what extent were you surprised by what happened on the Balkans relatively recently, some 30 years ago? Did you believe that something like that can happen after the world's experience with the Holocaust?
In the 90s, it happens again, in ex-Yugoslavia.
Yeah, that's what...
So, and as I see it right now...
How do you explain that?
Ignorance, bad education. People are dealing with, not really with it. So, it belongs to Germany. It's not our fault. But when I saw, and I spoke with Alexander Relic many times, and Serbia was the first country who called Jewish free. So they were involved. They know exactly what happens. And we saw it on the blocks in Auschwitz. 80,000 Serbians died there, Jewish people, Muslims. So if you search for an enemy, you will find an enemy. And it exactly happens, I think, in the former ex-Yugoslavian wars.
There is one story about us killing, mass murdering each other. But how do you see the role of the world, international community? How could it happen again that we have Srebrenica, Sarajevo, mass murders all over former Yugoslavia? I'm not talking about sides at this moment. How could that happen?
Money and power. A war is always a good business. Nobody really cares about the victims on the end or the perpetrators selling weapons. Look what happens in Syria. Look what happens in Afghanistan, Kuwait. So nobody has clean hands. None of the governments has clean hands. To sell weapons is okay, but on the end, the result, the end product, like the refugees, the migrants, who are swapping over while they never can live in their country, then they get blamed. Oh, they enter now our country, they took our jobs away, they steal our money. No. People not really able to think about it. And the politician regime is not willing to explain it. Well, then they have to show that they have dirty hands.
To what extent have we become indifferent toward suffering, murders, just because they take place somewhere far from us, like Myanmar, Middle East?
I think every war, every genocide is always the same.
But we are indifferent. I mean, we let it happen in the middle of Europe,
of course.
But we are totally indifferent when it happens somewhere thousands miles away.
Ignorance. It not belongs to us. And I heard that many times as well, like with the former Yugoslavian war. So how many people out of the war criminals, get really judged? Karadzic? So they still walk around here. They have jobs. So nobody goes against them. And we have the same situation in Germany. And I was dealing a long time with war criminals to bring them on trial. One of the famous ones was the bookkeeper of Auschwitz, Oskar Gröning. It was nearly 10 years to get him on trial. Well, the authorities, the government said, oh, they are so old. Is that an excuse? They were 20 years old when they commit crimes. And the things, I think that happened as well here. We're searching for excuses not to go against it. But the evil grows always faster than the good. So how can we stop it? Stopping in a way to teach the youth, and I think that's my tool. They become maybe the next presidents, the next judges. How can they deal with it without knowing what happens in the past? And to bring the truth up.
You are at the right place. This is not your first time in Montenegro, but I assume you know that essentially the government has not changed here since the 1990s, since the Balkan Wars. Up until today, no war crime committed on the territory of Montenegro has been solved. Can society, which have not dealt with such issues,
Why?
dramatic events, move on?
Why?
Can
the
it?
government covered it?
Can we move on?
Of course.
What does your personal experience suggest in that sense?
I met a lot of people here, like Alex, like Daliborka, people who really think about it. What can we do? They're active. But in a way, and it was really a big smile in my face when Book told me, that the president and his executive drive some Maybachs. I was what? Yeah, they have big cars, 2,050 each car, or something like that. Said, but they not judge people for crimes, or like you had, like the envelope affair, which is a big thing as well. If the government is not willing to bring people on trial, then the society has to do it. But if the society is corrupt as well, that never would work.
But maybe they would have to go to trial if they were solving the
Of
war
course.
crimes, because they were in power at that time.
Of course. And they should get on trial. But who will judge them? Who will make it happen? So they have, as a president or a member of the parliament, they have some legal ways not to get judged.
Mm-hmm.
You have to destroy these legal rights.
So how do you fight that situation?
In my case, we look for evidence, and to bring evidence in public, to show it public. Mm-hmm. And normally not in the country where it happens. So we come from outside to inside. Mm-hmm. That's how we act with it. Mm-hmm. And you find investigative journalists who are really interested. Right now we have a project which is also a really secret, that Japan has concentration camps on the same level like the Germans. They dealt with it on the same level. And it were Europeans were imprisoned in Surabaya in Indonesia under the laws of the Japanese. So nobody really spoke about that or investigated it. So we start right now where we have the evidence for, and we go to the country where it happens. We try to make a film, to give evidence, to show it public. And then I'm sure things start rolling.
What would be your message to those who are in constant denial when it comes to war crimes committed by their people, their ethnic group, or to those people who justify crimes, war crimes, with the war crimes of others? What would be your message to them? Because that's pretty common around here.
I think if the society is not able to deal with it, that's a major problem. If they ignore it and said, okay, let it go.
That's why I was asking, can such societies move on, really?
They can with people maybe like you, who is really offending things like that and make it public, or Daliborka, or Alexander Relic, or Vuk, or like the session we had this evening, like the European Union. We have to start on one point. If it's the right point, I have no clue. But we have to start on one point to start investigate it, to make it happen, to make it official, to make it open. The source is open for everybody. Then it will happen. But it's a process. And it's not really a funny process. And these guys, like your president, like his administrative companions, they will really fight with hard weapons against you. Mm.
Your daughter is married in Mostar, as I heard.
Yeah.
What kind of story?
She is married with a Bosnian. Mm-hmm. Not in Mostar, but she is married with a Bosnian.
How did she end up here?
No, both lives in Germany.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really? Oh, okay. He was a refugee?
Yeah.
So how do you see today's Bosnia? Definitely the most affected by the wars in ex-Yugoslavia.
I think if
do you have any knowledge of Bosnia?
We not spoke that often about it. Well, it bothers him. Mm-hmm. But I spoke a lot with Alex about it, and I got a lot of information how the construct is, who fights against whom, and why it happens. So, but I think it's a construct you're not, as an outstander, you not really understand why it happens. Muslims and things like that. for me, it was really, really strange to listen to. But one sentence I will not forget when my daughter asked me, when she got pregnant, that do you think it can happen again? What happens to the Jews, now to the Muslims? And I never really expect a question like that from my daughter. Well, I was sure she was well educated about wars and stuff like that. But now she was, in a way, confronted with it by marriage of a Bosnian Muslim. So can it happen that we have the same situation, that I'm a mixed, a mongrel? So I bring a birth with a quarter Muslim, half Muslim, Muslim. And I said, oh, give me time, I have to think about that. And I said, on the end, the only answer can be yes. It can happen.
That's a devastating truth.
Yeah.
How about your daughter? Did the burden you feel pass on her? She's your only child, right?
Yeah. No. I took the burden of the family away from my kids. Mm-hmm. I'm open.
You managed to do that?
Yeah. No, my kids always said, you're the fortress for us. We never have to deal with it. You cut our great-grandfather in pieces. You were the fortress for us. You fight for us. That never happens to us in that way, that we get that pain on us, or the heavy weight of history on our shoulders.
But has Nazi ideology today transferred to new generations? And are you worried about the fact that the right, the ultra-right, far-right, has been strengthening throughout the world?
Oh, of course. And it's much easier in modern days with all the media stuff, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You can set a message, look about what Trump did all the time, the master of Twitter. So people not really read a full article in the news, they read the headlines. So, and with a headline you can reach millions by click. So if you go on Facebook, and I said it to the students many times, you have the search function in it. Go in, skip in Heinrich Himmler. Words out, out of the Second World War. And they get really shocked. Hundreds of pages went up with swastikas on it. The first logo, like the profile logo, is a swastika, like a rune or a SS symbol. Or you see Hitler when he raised up his hand to conquer it. Mm-hmm. So it's easier today to spread hate messages, and it's common. It's a good tool. It's a powerful weapon, hate. Mm-hmm. With a bullet, you can shoot 1, you can shoot 10, but that's it. Then you have to load the weapon again. But with hate, you can shoot million people on a long distance for a long period. If hate is seeded in modern communities or in society, it grows, and it grows really fast. Mm. But on the end, everybody says, it was not my fault, sorry. I did nothing. I did nothing wrong. The Germans said that as well. If you listen to the Germans, 99% were socialists. In that time, the Holocaust or the war crimes became power. They were somewhere in holidays, but not in Germany.
Everyone had an excuse.
Of course.
You ended up doing a pretty tough job. You are chief cook by profession.
Yeah.
Have you ever worked in this profession?
Yeah, of course. I was self-employed for many years.
Were you good?
I hope. It's always not that easy to give a statement up by yourself.
What do you say to those people who think that you turned your family tragedy situation into a business?
Is it really a business?
I don't know. Is it?
No.
You are lecturing,
you get
writing
not rich
books.
Out of it.
I'm just asking this because I'm assuming there are people who would ask you that question.
Of course. People think that I create a foundation to get donations. The foundation runs without any donations. So we get no money from outside. Mm-hmm. Every money I get is when I give lectures lessons in school, of course, I get a honorarium. But it's not that I can afford a Maybach or other things in that way. And every cent I earn, I place in it to make research. Of course, I get paid for a book.
Yeah.
Is it wrong to get paid for maybe 10, 15 years of research to write a book with 250, 300 pages? And to get paid in a salary which is not like a Harry Potter. So nobody pays me 300 million for my book, of course not.
No, I just thought that it is good to clear this out.
Yeah, of course.
Because I believe there
I
are
have no
people
problem with
that
it.
are wondering. Aleksandar Reljić, a journalist from Novi Sad, your friend, has made a movie about your life under the name Grandson.
Yeah.
Now he's making a movie about the fortress Mamula in Montenegro, which used to be a notorious prison and is now being commercialized and turned into a casino. What do you think about that?
Horrible. And I think there is more behind the contract of 50-year lease. So how many people will be still alive in 50 years? So what is the background? Money? I think yes.
Is that proper thing to do? That's what I'm asking. What's your position on that? To turn a notorious prison into a
build
casino?
a resort out
What's
of...
a German practice when it comes to that?
In Germany, you would never get a contract for things like that. So that means if I would build a resort out of Dachau, it's the same situation. The people would really hit me if I would do things like that. And to have Mamula, it's a beautiful island, coastline, everything is there. Why the government made a decision in a way to make a resort out of it? And said, okay, they will have a small remembrance part. The whole island is a remembrance part. And not only out of the Second World War. It was used when the informations are true, in the Yugoslavian war as well, as a prison. It was a concept of a prison. So how it can be that a mayor or politician creates like for me it sounds really strange, to have a cruelty place with so much history in crimes, and now you make a resort, a 5-star resort out of it. How must it sound for the victims, and they're still alive there? How must it sound for them to see, okay, wow.
Thank you very much
Welcome.
for this interview, and it was very interesting for me, really. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for being here.
To bi bilo sve za večeras. Vidimo se narednog četvrtka u istom terminu.